Okay, let us look at our passage today. The title for today's message is The Reason for Making Oath is Because We Want to Be Like God. Okay, Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 to 37. Okay, let us read those verses. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Okay, last week we've learned about two commandments, and then Jesus is teaching about the true intention of God, okay, who gave us those commandments. We learned about the commandment on murder. So the Jews, they thought if they didn't kill anybody, if they didn't physically kill anybody, they thought they observed that commandment. You shall not murder. But Jesus taught that God's true intention was not that. God's true intention was he wanted us to be the peacemaker, the people who bring the peace and life to others, to our neighbors. So when we say some hurtful words to our neighbors, and then if we bring darkness and pains and death to that person's heart, that means we committed the sin murder. Jesus is teaching about what is God's true intention. He wants us to be the people who bring the life to other people's life. And then secondly, Jesus was teaching that the true meaning of the commandment, you shall not commit adultery. So at the time of Jesus, the Jews, they thought that if they didn't commit adultery with a married woman, they were okay. But no, Jesus taught that that was not, you are missing the true intention of God. God made male and female, and then God let them be oneness. So two people, they became one. That was God's true intention. So through that united relation, God wanted to show the world what is the true oneness, what is the true love, considering the other as himself, as herself. But people are considering other people as the tool, as the tools to fulfill, satisfy their own needs or their own desire. At that point, they already committed the sin of adultery because they opposed against God's true intention. And then today, Jesus is teaching that about the oath. Okay, in the Old Testament, we can see some instructions about oath, like Numbers 19 or Leviticus 30. Those chapters are teaching about oath. And then we can summarize those teachings in the Old Testament into 2 points. So God said, when you make the oath, it should be true one. Okay, you should not make any false or empty oath. That is the number 1 teaching. And then second teaching in the Old Testament is that when you make the oath, you have to keep it. That's the second teaching in the Old Testament. But here in today's passage, Jesus is saying that you should not swear an oath at all. Okay, at all. And then when we look at the 10 commandments, on the 3rd commandment, we have that commandment about God's name. Okay? On the third commandment, God says, you should not misuse God's name, your Lord. Okay? So about the commandment, the Jews, they thought that they are okay. Because whenever they're making the oath, they avoid to use God's name. They actually used like earth or heaven or Jerusalem. I'm making an oath to you, by the name of heaven or Jerusalem or earth. So they are making sure that I am actually making this promise, and that I will keep it. But here, Jesus said, you should not swear on an oath at all, either by heaven or it is God's throne. Jews, they thought, we're okay. We're making oaths by earth or heaven. We're avoiding use God's name, so we're okay. But here Jesus says, heaven is God's throne. Even though you are thinking that you are making the oath by heaven, but actually you are making the oath by God's name. Now, how about the earth? They were making the oath by the earth. But Jesus says, you should not do it because it is his footstool. Or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. So the Jews, they thought they're making oaths and then they're not using God's name, so they're okay. But Jesus says in today's passage, you should not make the oath at all. Even when you look at verse 36, Jesus says, you should not swear by your head. You are thinking that is your life. But Jesus says, no, that does not belong to you. It is from God, our Creator. So you cannot swear by your head. Okay? Here, our question is, why? Jesus says, he teaches that the language of God's children should be simply yes, yes, and no, and no. Yeah? When it is yes, when it is true, you can say yes. And when it is not, you can say just no. You should not make any oath on it. Yeah? That is actually of honest and faithful stance that the children of God can have. Okay? Then here, our question is, why? Why would people make oaths? Why it is so easy? Why is it so easy for people to make oaths? Because people do not like to admit their limitations. People want to do things as they want, when they want, how they want. So they do not want to admit they have limitations. Okay? When they are making oath by the name of the gods in the ancient time, they have the authority, they have the power. In the ancient time, people thought the name actually embodies that being's essence. So when you are using God's name, you are borrowing his power, actually, his authority. It is your words, but you have his power when you are making oath by his name. So in the ancient time, people are making oaths by their God's name. Okay? But when we are looking at the Old Testament teachings, yeah, actually, when you look at the 10 Commandments, you can summarize those 10 Commandments into one sentence. What is that? You have to love your God with your whole heart. Yeah? And in that sentence, actually, one concept is hidden. Okay? When Jesus is teaching that you have to love your God with all your heart and all your strength, all your soul. Yeah, under that sentence, Jesus is teaching that you should not use God for your benefit. You should not use God for your benefit, but love God with all of your heart, all of your strength, all of your soul. Yeah? People actually use God. People say, we believe in God, we love God, but in many cases, we are using God. We are using God to make the things are better. Yeah? Make my wishes to be true. Sometimes we are using God's name for our benefits. How simple we are. And then when you look at the story of Adam, okay, in Genesis, you can see the similar temptation there. The serpent came to the first couple. What was his temptation? Yeah, eat from this tree, the tree of knowledge. Then you will be like God. You do not have to depend on God any longer. You can be God for yourself. You know everything like God. You can decide what is wrong, what is right. You don't have to follow God's, decision, or you don't have to follow God's law. You are the standard. You can make what is right. You can what is wrong, evil. That's the meaning of eating from that tree. And then actually Adam ate from that tree. And then exact same temptation we are facing every day. We want to be God. We want to do whatever we want, whenever we want, however, as we want. We want to be God. And this same serpent actually came to Jesus. And then he tested even Jesus. Do you remember the 3 tests Jesus met in the wilderness? After 40 days of fasting, the serpent said, Jesus, you have to make those stones into bread. You have to throw yourself off the top of the building and prove yourself to be the Son of God. Okay? Just bow down to me. I will give you everything in this world. The serpent actually brought the same temptation to Jesus, just as he did to Adam. Actually, Satan is asking Jesus to be God. Actually, Jesus, he is. But Jesus stayed there, okay, as the obedient son. Jesus actually could make the stones into bread. It's just nothing. But Jesus did not listen to Satan's words. Jesus stayed in that position as the obedient son. We are facing the exact same temptation every day. Satan, who visited Adam and then came to Jesus, he is visiting us every moment of our life. He is saying that you have to be God. You do not have to depend on God. You have to decide, and then you have to use God, use his power for your benefit. You have to be God for yourself. So let us go back to our passage today. Jesus is teaching about oath. How simple we are. We are even using God, God's name, God's power, God's love for our benefit. We have to look at our hearts every day and then look at that temptation of Satan. We have to admit our limitation. We are a creature. We have to confess that, God, you are my creator. And then we have to admit our limitations in front of him. Okay? So we have to be the obedient son every moment of our life. And then the secret, what is that? We're always saying this every week. How can we be like that? How can we, get the victory at this point of temptation? Adam failed, but how can we? Yeah, the secret is that we have to come to God every moment. We do not have that kind of capacity or strength in ourselves. We have to go to God's throne of grace every moment. We have to ask for God's grace. We have to listen to his voice. Then we have to get his wisdom every moment. Okay, let us pray. Remembering today's message, then let us pray all together.